Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Home Ice Advantage. And we are in a huge Game 5 situation tonight out at Crypto in downtown Los Angeles. And we've got ourselves the guys who know all about what's going on here. And let's look at and hear from Jack Michaels and Louie DeBrusk, the TV voices of the Edmonton Oilers. Guys, thanks for joining us. And safe travels here to LA and a little baseball last night, huh, Jack?
Yeah, we enjoyed that. And Ted, I'm sure Louie would be very quick to join me in politely correcting you that we are no longer the voices of the Edmonton Oilers. We are, at this point, just the voice of this series on your friendly Canadian neighbors out Sportsnet. We do not have a dog in the fight. Yes, there'll be some regional slants just based on our superior knowledge of the Oilers. But if you noticed, my overtime call was remarkably neutral compared to what it would be on a regional show when I probably would have shattered Louis' eardrums permanently.
I did catch that, Jack, because I'm watching your feed here in LA when I'm at home. So it definitely.
Well, I appreciate the loyalty. But in all honesty, I mean, it has been a series where it's been very easy to heap praise on both hockey clubs, and yet at the same time, criticism. It's amazing. These two teams, I would suggest. I'm not sure there's been much of an extended sequence where they've actually both played well at the same time. It's made for really compelling theater. But I don't know whether there's been a stretch where I'd say, oh, that was an even period or even an even 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
The roller coaster effect in this series has been nothing short of remarkable.
It was funny last night on NHL Network. They asked Johnny, they said, so what are your thoughts about the series moving forward? He sticks his hands out. I have no idea. It's like minute to minute, right? Who knows?
I would agree. It's been a roller coaster ride. That's how we've summed it up throughout this series so far. And, listen, in games, it's a roller coaster ride, not just the series, the way it's gone back and forth, home dominated series in the first 4 games, but the fact that in each and every game, it's been an up and down battle between both sides. With the exception of game 2, either game could have come up with that win late in the third period. It's been incredible how it's gone right down to the wire in 3 of the 4 games. Game 2, LA was able to close it out in a real strong performance, but it was still a 1-goal game in the third period, even in that one, but it was earlier in the period. There's been late heroics, and I think when you look at it that way, it's people coming up with big executed plays at big times, and it's been a great series to call.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it that the Kings could easily have swept, and you guys could easily be up 3-1. I mean, it's been
that's what makes it a great series, right?
Right.
That's what makes it an awesome series. I think, especially with the way Edmonton came back in game 1, I don't think anybody expected them to come flying back, make it 5-5 in the third period. And what we've seen also in this series is quick goals after a goal against. We've seen teams respond quickly right after a goal against. I know both coaches have talked about that, but that's kind of been the hockey these two teams have played. They know each other very, very well, and no team has ever had. That was the 11th time in game 4 that there's been a 2 or more goal deficit erased in the series, the 4 series so far, being 3 series and now 4 games in the 4th season between these two teams. 6 times for Edmonton and 5 times for LA. So it's even in that regard that both teams have come from behind.
Yeah, by the way,
that's 11 times in 22 games. So basically half the time you're talking about a major swing, because I mean, playoffs for a while, and certainly I think at the tail end of Louis' career, you get a 2-goal lead and it was lights out. I mean, that was it. You didn't see the big swings, and that's what I think is really great about today's NHL is a little more offense. Yeah.
Well, because guys,
you're allowed to hold on back then a little bit more. You could literally, you were water skiing behind people. Back then it was incredible. There'd be 15 penalties a period if you look back at those games and watch them from today's standards. But I think that allows players to do more.
Yeah, and Jack, you referenced, I think you said 11 times in 22 games you've had the 2-goal comebacks. Is that what?
Yeah.
I think it's 18 times in 22 games that we've had 6 goals or more. So if you love offense, this series over the years has had a lot of offense.
Yeah. By the way, before we continue on, could you guys introduce yourselves, like how long you've been doing what you're doing, so everybody knows who might not be familiar with your work? Jack, first.
Well, I mean, first of all, Louie and I assume that everyone in Los Angeles and, in fact, North America knows who we are. But just in case,
there's one or two out there.
I've been the voice of the Oilers for 15 years, the first 10 on radio. And then Louie and I moved to television. Louie was always there, but I moved to television with Louie 5 years ago. So this is our 5th year together in the TV booth and my 15th year in Edmonton overall.
That's great. What about you, Lou?
Yeah. Same. My 17th year here doing the TV in Edmonton, and stepped away for a couple of years where I did panel in Toronto, but was still part of Sportsnet, part of Rogers, and started off radio in Phoenix for 3 years before coming over to Edmonton and starting the TV. So been around this team for a while, and it's been a roller coaster ride as well.
No, how many of those? He's not Louie DeBrusk. He's Jake DeBrusk's dad. That's what
yeah, exactly.
Well, he yes. And that is,
I'm okay with that.
I've seen that transition over the years, and actually, I've really reveled in it because Louie was the older of two brothers, and I think he needed a little humble pie. So the fact that Jake continues to put up individual seasons that eclipse Louie's career makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I'm okay with that. I hope he doubles it 1 year. I hope he doubles it 1 year.
Do they line up to get your autograph here because of your incredible career at Long Beach?
Yeah, I love Long Beach, though. I really did. Look at that old blast from the past right there.
That's right. There's Louie down in the lower left-hand corner for our Ice Dogs. About almost 30 years ago now, Lou.
No, don't say that. That seems like it's way too long ago. But you know what? We had a real strong team, great team. John Van Boxmeer was our coach, great coach, and I loved my time in Long Beach. You know what? It was a good atmosphere in that barn, and the IHL, the old International Hockey League, what a terrific league, and it was instrumental in me getting myself back to the NHL for a few more years. So I always have fond memories of Long Beach.
Yeah, and by the way,
I called a bunch of games in that building, not when they were in the IHL, but in the WCHL, and then later the Coast.
Yes,
that's where Yaroslav Halak cut his teeth in the ECHL. He was a goaltender for the Long Beach Ice Dogs. Boxy was still the coach. Darryl Williams succeeded him.
Yep.
But what I remember most, and I believe he's an ex-teammate of Louie, but definitely a guy Louie played against. But what I remember most is when you walked into that cavernous arena, there was a huge mural of Todd Gillingham doing the pumpernickel after a big goal for the Long Beach Ice Dogs. So I think in Long Beach 1 year, Gillingham might have had 25 goals in 375 minutes.
I think you're right. And Gilly was a great guy. We lost him a couple of years ago. Out of the really sad. Did you ever play with him, Louie?
I never did, but he was one of those guys in the game that made his mark in multiple teams, also down in St. John's in the American Hockey League. Played against him numerous times, and he was always a character, always a tough customer, always played hard, and always seemed to have a huge fan support wherever he went because of the way he played. He was one of those guys. And that was back, and it's no different now. You have these role players. Obviously, there was a lot more tough guys back in the day, and it was a different game. But when, you had one of those players that came in and just, did it his way and played that hard, and everybody got on board, and it really got the building going. And I think especially home fans just really gravitated towards players like that. So, yeah, he had a great following in Long Beach, and I remember seeing that big mural, actually, Jack. So he was a legend there.
Yep, no
Louie,
doubt.
I just want to ask you a quick question about I think you were, if I remember correctly, you were in Boston in the stands for Jake's first goal. I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But what's it like for you to be ice level when your son's playing? I mean, it's kind of like back in when he was growing up.
Yeah, and I used to always stand in the corner of the rink. I wasn't somebody that would be up in the stands when he was in minor hockey. I'd be down typically where the Zamboni comes out or in the corner. I like to be at ice level in those old cold rinks with a coffee in my hand in the corner with a couple dads. We'd sit and watch the game. So I was used to being at ice level. It's been incredible. It's awesome to be at ice level and watch him play at this level, the best level in the league, the National Hockey League. For me, I catch myself ISO-camming him a few times a game, which is pretty hard not to do that when it's your kid out there, and I get busted the odd time. Yeah, it's pretty funny. You know, Brad Harrison on the Oilers bench, one of the equipment trainers, he's caught me a couple times kind of stepping up and looking when he's on a run, and got to call a couple goals of his too, which has been special.
Nice.
Jack was the first one to call that one while I was calling one of his games, which is for me, I mean, every dad likes seeing their kid score a goal. I don't know which one doesn't, and I'm no different. I get excited about it.
Yeah,
there's a great story though of that first goal in Boston, and of course on the hockey side there was Louie crying, but as you can probably tell in the streams we have here, you know, Louie doesn't need a filter. I have about 14 going on. The DeBrusk clan is a very good looking family. It just is, and I'm not trying to put one family above the other, but the DeBrusk family is a magnificent looking family. Jake's a handsome guy. Louie's handsome. Cindy, Louie's wife, is a beautiful woman. Louie has a daughter, Jordan, that, you know, a lot of Edmontonians would love to date, but they know who the dad is. And then there's Louie's mother-in-law. And when Jake scored that goal, you know, they showed Louie with the tear, and then they panned, and there's these three beautiful women sitting next to Louie. And the comments online, it was Louie's daughter who pointed out to Louie's mother-in-law, "Hey, grandma, there's a lot of guys out there lining up to date you just in case." So that's my favorite part of that whole story is Louie with the manful tear, and then the three beautiful ladies sitting next to him.
Love it.
I was in good company, that's for sure. The thing is with that, one thing about that though too is it's a long day to get there, to get everybody on board, to get to Boston for that game. We knew he was going to play game number 1, to get into the city. It's emotional seeing him play his first National Hockey League game too. And that was, for me, that was just as important. I mean, that was the big special moment, was the fact he was playing his first game. For him to go out there and score on home ice in front of the home crowd, the way they erupted, it was pretty emotional, obviously. I wasn't crying, though. There was something in the building. There was still dust. There was still dust at TD Garden. I don't know what they had in there before the opening, but that got in my eyes. That's all that.
Great
Thanks
stuff.
for clarifying.
Yeah, exactly. And last thing on the IHL, real quick, before we go to the series here. Do you agree with me, Lou, that back then it was such a bad clutch and grab in the NHL that the I was actually a better game to watch for the fans? Because you guys were playing your asses off going end to end, and there wasn't that you couldn't get through the neutral zone stuff.
Yeah, the clutching and grabbing was incredible. It was a physical league too, and the IHL, unlike the AHL, which I think was more of a development league, the IHL was kind of those older guys that had been around, like myself at that time. I played some years in the NHL, and guys were still trying to continue their career, trying to settle down. They paid the guys well in the IHL too, and it was a more comfortable league in that regard. Better cities, obviously, in California, Vegas, all over the place, San Antonio. So for me, I think that, you know, you try and go in there and just try and continue your career. So it was an older, more mature league, but at the same time, it got gritty. It got pretty gritty. There were some characters in that league over the years. And, yeah, just a different game. You know, that was the era that I came up in. I respect the game so much now. I still think there's a place for that grittiness and that over the top. I mean, a lot of people talk about the Florida Panthers being the butchers for a good reason. They play that hard style, and why they'd won a Stanley Cup and went to a final the year before. I think in this series, it's been physical, but it's been a little tamer in that regard. But there's still that bite and edge to it. But yeah, I think back then you could just muscle yourself into a mix. You could cross check. We called it the hard area in front of the net for a reason. You go to the front of the net, you are paying a price.
Absolutely.
You know, Louie, to your point about just like I went through the hit totals from last year to this year with the Kings and Oilers. Last year, 248 hits in the 5 games for LA, 179 for Edmonton. Mm-hmm. This year, we are at 78 for Edmonton, 75 LA. Hits are down, goals are up.
Don't tell Zach Hyman that. He had 12 the other night.
Yes, I know.
Well, and I think it's something Edmonton wants to do more of, and they did in the third period and overtime in Game 4. I think they're starting to understand that for them to slow down this Los Angeles team, they have to start targeting players. When I'm on the ice level and I'm watching, and I talked to Adam Henrique about this exact thing this morning, there's just a little extra intensity in the eyes of the players when they're coming in for a hit. when they're coming in to hit somebody along the boards, a lot of that happens in those interactions across going to each bench respectively in front of me. I can just see the intent in the players trying to deliver the hit is, I'm trying to punish you here. I'm not just hitting you because I want to hit you. I'm hitting you because I want to try and hurt you. I don't mean that, well, it's kind of in a negative way. It's a clean hit, but you're trying to take a little bit of the wind out of the sails of the best players. Adrian Kempe being one of those guys that's been red hot, held off the score sheet for the first time in Game 4. The depth of the three lines up forward, but the four defensemen of the Los Angeles Kings. Big guys, they can take the physicality, but you feel after time, can you wear them down a little bit by continuing to get on the body? And I think the Kings have had that approach right from get one. I mean, look at Game 3, that first hit by Warren Foegele on Brett Kulak. Yes. I mean, it was a big hit. He came in there, he blew him up. Now, the great thing about hockey players, guys, is they jump right back up and get in the mix. These guys are tough. They're really tough.
Has anybody been talking at all about the total amount of goals in this series? Not only is it outrageous, but the last two games, and I texted you, Jack, before or during Game 2 about how the Kings were 42-0-4 this season.
You whammied
three or more goals, right?
You whammied him. And as I mean, Ted, that's a huge storyline in this series. And it's something that Louie and I have kind of been talking about. And I think we have some differing viewpoints, in terms of what a mental edge, could mean in Game 5. But I would say this, LA's two hallmarks all year long have been when they have the lead after two periods, it's over. They had lost one game in regulation all year long, and now they've lost two in 3 days. Same thing. When they get 3 goals, they hadn't lost a game in regulation all year long. Now they've lost 2 in a row. And the other thing is Darcy Kemper, who's a Vezina finalist. And you look back 3 years ago in that Edmonton-Calgary series, Jacob Markstrom, Vezina finalist. I think Markstrom survived a wild Game 1 and won that game 9-6. That was a game that Calgary led 6-2. It was over. Just like the Kings led 4-0 in Game 1. It's over. Now, Kemper won Game 1. But now you look at Markstrom. He hasn't beaten Edmonton since. He's lost 9 in a row. Kemper came back with a very strong Game 2. Louis talked about it. I think that was the most impressive stretch that I've seen from the Kings all series long, is when the Oilers cut it to 3-2 with 13 minutes to go. The Kings came right back with 3 goals in 4.5 minutes to put the game out of reach. But Darcy Kemper, going into this series, had given up 5 goals once in 47 starts. Now he's given up 5 twice, and he's given up 4 in the other. So I think some of the foundation that LA has built all year long, I mean, there's some cracks in it. And I think the mental part of this series will be, can the Kings unlock a different way to win the series? Because clearly, in my view, looking at the last 3 years, and I go back again to Game 4 2 years ago when they're up 3-0, 2-1 in games, they tried to sit on it. It didn't happen. I think they got a little conservative. Louie's right. Edmonton pushing. Of course they're going to push. But I think the Kings were taking it to the Oilers, and they didn't finish the job. They've got to find a way to finish the job to win this series. And I think part of it will be mental as well as physical.
I was going to ask Louie
that stumbling block.
Louie, your thought as a player on the doubts that tend to creep in now. What are your thoughts on that going into Game 5?
It's natural, right? It's inevitable for that to happen, because you look at a situation. This team has had Edmonton backs up against the wall a couple of times in the last 4 years, and they haven't been able to finish it off. Up 3-2, lost Game 6 at home, lost Game 7 2-0 4 years ago. 2 years ago, they had, like Jack said, the 3-0 lead. They stormed back and won in overtime Edmonton to kind of eliminate that, never look back after that. Right. So that was a 2-1 lead again in the series, and they would have been up 3-1. We see it this year again, a 2-1 lead in the series, a 2-0 lead in the series. Game 3 was a hard fought battle, but Edmonton came out, finished that one off. And then in Game 4, it looked like, oh, here you go. They're back to their style. So they've reset. They've come into the game, eliminate a 2-0 lead up into the third period for the 4th consecutive time in the series. They've had the lead going into the third period. But a different machine in Edmonton coming out the third period and being able to a way to finish that off. And here's the thing: I know there's been so much talk about LA, and I know even Jim Hiller didn't take too kindly to the question asked about what he can do different in the third period to close out the Edmonton Oilers. I can tell you this: it's not easy. It's not easy to close out that team when they're desperate and they're playing the way they did in the third period and overtime. They might be the best team at that full court press with the players they have. And Los Angeles, especially their core that's been around for the 4 years, they've seen it. They've seen it before. So they understand how tough it is to slow that momentum down once they get it. The key for me for Los Angeles is don't relinquish it. They're going to have to try and continue to push the way they have in games and where they've been able to control. But it won't be easy. You know, Edmonton's gaining confidence every game. They're starting to become the team that we've seen in the past, even though they were banged up coming into the playoffs. The big question for me now is this a different Los Angeles team? You know, is this a team? Now, they have home ice advantage. They've been terrific at home. The best home ice record in the National Hockey League. They've got 2 of 3 in a 3-game series at home. They've earned that in the regular season, and that's why you play hard in the regular season. Can they come out and do what they've done at home for the final 3 games, and if they have to, go to Game 7? But Edmonton's trying to win that one game. They need to win at least one game in Los Angeles. So it's just such an intriguing series. It really is. Have they changed? Are they able to finish it off? Is this the year they finally knock Edmonton off? Or is history going to repeat itself? And the Oilers are getting better by the game. And now, once they have that confidence, it's very hard to slow them down.
Well, look, I think part of the problem for LA in the third period is you can't keep playing 4.5 defensemen and 8 forwards. I mean, Jacob Mravari, or whether it was Mravari in Game 4 or Spence in Game 3, they both played under 3 minutes. And Brandt Clarke played 9 minutes heading into overtime in Game 4 and played 3 minutes in overtime.
Right.
You know,
and that's the guy for me. That's the guy for me, because Brandt Clarke, and Louie and I have heard about this Brandt Clarke for 3 or 4 years now. We knew he was.
We like him.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I mean, I love Drew Doughty, but he's 35. He's starting to get banged up a little bit. I mean, Brandt Clarke is kind of that future guy. I'm not saying he's the same kind of player as Drew Doughty, but he's certainly the kind of prospect that is at least in the same conversation. Yeah. And I think now is the time, especially when you've got Kopitar at 37 and Doughty at 35, you need some supplemental young legs that are the future of your organization. I mean, Brandt Clarke, I mean, the way they talk about him, I assume he's going to be an LA King for a decade plus. You've got to give him some traction in games like this at a young age. We know Doughty handled it. So why can't Brandt Clarke handle it?
I'll tell you why, Jack. Because Brandt Clarke has the far better offensively than Drew, but defensively, he's not Doughty. He won't be Doughty.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he is, but don't you have to find out what he's got in gut check games like this? You can't hide him forever. That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you, but that's the way this organization has treated Brandt Clarke. They put the reins on him starting in training camp. They were doing inter-squad games and would not allow him to go below the hash marks. It started then because they've done this to their young kids. I mean, so whether it's Clarke that played 9 minutes in Game 4, whether it's Mravari or Spence that played less than 3, whether it's Sammy Helenius who plays 3 shifts in the first period, never took a draw, your fourth line center, never saw the ice after the first period.
Louie pointed out he had 4 hits in 1 minute 44 seconds. So he was engaged in the game.
Right. Yep. But they don't trust their kids. Like, that's the problem with this organization. And so for things to turn around, like, you can't play like the Gavrikov penalty. The guy was out there, it was a 2:26 shift.
Yeah.
You know, he's gassed. So for him to take a penalty, not surprising.
Exactly.
But that's the problem with LA, is that they've gone from playing 12 forwards and 6D during the regular season to playing, 8 or 9 forwards in the playoffs and 4.5D. I mean, exactly. Bench the final 13 minutes.
Right. Louie and I talked about it. They were trying to finish this game with 12 skaters. And, it's funny you said this because Louie and I covered a series, I believe it was 4 years ago. It was a first round series between Edmonton and Winnipeg. And we both think the world of Dave Tippett. He was absolutely instrumental in
I love
getting
Dave.
this team back on a playoff track. And
Yep.
he led the Oilers to the playoffs twice, and it was gonna be three times at the time he was let go. But the one thing in a Winnipeg series where scoring was at a premium, Dave started to go 9 forwards and 4 defense. And I think that heavy load ultimately, and Louis may disagree, I think it did factor a bit in the series. Winnipeg was just a shade deeper. I don't think the Jets were necessarily, they're certainly not as deep then as they are now, but they were fairly deep. And I think they had a little bit more zip as that series moved along. In fact, the Oilers blew a 4-1 lead in the third period of that series and lost the game in overtime. So this is familiar ground for Louis and I in terms of covering this type of series and the potential impact that shortening your bench can have as the series and the games grow longer.
Right. Now,
And
Louis,
I don't blame coaches for doing it. And I'm with them. When the heat of the battle and crunch time, you go to the players that you feel can get the job done, and every coach does it. It's hard not to. You want to go with your veteran players, the guys that are playing well, the guys that you feel are reliable in those situations. And players play differently in the playoffs. Sometimes guys can weather that storm. Like, for instance, Laferriere. I think he's a young player, but he's a playoff kind of player. He takes hits to make plays. He gets pucks in behind. So you saw Jim Hiller start to go back to him on that top line instead of Kuzmenko because there was just a little more responsibility there on his part. But in saying that, I think Edmonton has learned that, Jack, right? We look back at that series a lot and we say, over the course of time building towards what they are now, I think they've understood that they just can't do it with the top guys. The top guys are elite as elite can be, and they get the job done a lot of times. But when it's in the crunch, you need everybody firing on all cylinders. And the depth they used, I believe, in Game 4 really came through. They started to roll 4 lines. They started to get guys back into the lineup. The only guy that didn't play was Ty Emberson. Yeah. And again, he didn't play the third period or the overtime. So his last shift was in the second period. When you put a player on the ice, on the bench for that long, and trust me, I know what that feels like 350 times. So it's really hard to get back into the game. It's really hard to reintroduce them to the game when the Oilers were pushing the way they were pushing. For Jim Hiller, he's looking down his bench going, am I going to put one of these kids out right now?
He's like, not being Peter Klima, in other words.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say that.
How do I get them back into the game, right? So, and now if you had a second overtime period, you might tell the kids, hey, get out there, get an extra skate right before we start. And I'm going to try and get you out there in the first 4 rotation. I'm going to try and get you on the ice. That discussion would probably start to happen after that period. But, I got to be honest with you. Down there on the bench and you're watching how fast things are happening on both sides, the matchup lineups that you want, the guys jumping over the boards, quick changes. It's like a second period, that first overtime period too. So it's a long change. Yeah. And that makes a big difference too. And I ultimately believe Edmonton capitalized on that more than Los Angeles. They're a team that can hem you in and they can extend your shift, resulting in the game-winning goal, drawing the penalty on Gavrikov, and then Draisaitl scores in overtime.
I like the way the Edmonton Oilers used Podkolzin in overtime and throughout the game. I thought that he provided some good energy to to the Oiler team. I mean, I looked at his minutes; they weren't that good, but there's a guy that hit wore players down, as you said with Hellenius for his 3 shifts. He had 4 hits. I can't remember how many Podkolzin hit, but maybe I'm making too much of it. I just thought there was a guy that got used effectively in limited time.
Simplified, right? You have to simplify your game. And for Podkolzin, he's a real reliable player, responsible. And he doesn't get enough credit for that. I know, offense has been a little hard for him to come by this year. But players like playing with him because the play doesn't die on his stick. But he's big and he's physical and he's faster than you think. So what does he do? He gets a puck in behind, starts to chip and charge, starts to take the body, had 7 hits in the game and didn't play a ton of minutes. But again, I do believe the game plan for Edmonton is to try and wear down the top 4 defense of the Los Angeles Kings.
Louis, I'm wondering, because you're standing right there between the benches, are you noticing something because you're so up close that many of us are not, as far as like whatever's happening in the game, maybe the Kings wearing down? Are you able to see that up close in a different way?
To me, there was an energy shift in the game, and I just felt Edmonton had more juice left in the tank, more gas in the tank in the third period and overtime. So you could say LA was sitting back. I just think Edmonton found their game, and we've seen this before. This is a team that went to the Stanley Cup final last year. They had to grit out wins from behind. They had to chase series. They had to chase games. This is a comfortable team from behind. Now, you don't ever want to be a comfortable team from behind. Leon Draisaitl said after the game, he kind of joked and said, it would be nice to play with a lead a little bit in this series because they haven't had it for that much. But at the same time, I would tell you maybe the most comfortable team in the National Hockey League playing from behind. Because they've done it a lot.
That overtime, the Oilers hunted down pucks like they were stealing everybody's lunch money. It was I don't want you
desperate.
They
didn't want to go down 3-1. They understood that if they go down 3-1, that's a kiss of death.
I don't want to say like they wanted to win it more because I don't want to question the heart of the Kings, but the Edmonton Oilers definitely played like we are not losing this game. They had they controlled it for at least 95% of overtime, I thought.
So, and I think part of that was the way the game finished in regulation. Yes, there's an intermission to regroup, but I think when you go into the dressing room in a Stanley Cup sudden death overtime situation, usually one team feels like this game should be over. Why are we still playing? And the other team is thinking, we're going to finish this. We've worked too hard and fought too long to let this one slip away now. Generally speaking, that's the way a lot of these overtimes happen. And I felt like, again, the mental side of it, I think LA can't help but be thinking to themselves, this game should be over. We should be up 3-1. Maybe we should have swept the series, and instead we're fighting for our lives in an arena that is deafening, and it's just seeming inevitable. And you're right, that's where Darcy Kemper played his best hockey. But unfortunately for the Kings, that was really the only guy that showed up for overtime. I will say this, Jim Hiller does have one meaningful point, and that is Edmonton misses an empty netter. There was a play about 4 minutes to go, and Louie and I documented it. At the time, Kevin Fiala hit the goalpost off the rush. Maybe that makes it 4-2, and it's finally game over. So the Kings, have had some looks, but again, they haven't finished it. We saw it in game 1. They got away with it. We saw it in game 4. They did not get away with it.
Yeah, it's exactly what I asked Coach Knobloch about after game 2 is that you guys are so close, but you're not finishing. Now it's the other way around.
That can start to play on your mind a little bit too.
Exactly.
Let's face it. I don't think anybody expected the goal totals of the series. I know we touched on this at the start of this, and I don't think anybody expected the goal totals to be what they were when you've got the second best defensive team in the National Hockey League, the Los Angeles Kings, up against Edmonton, who we didn't really know what the lineup was going to look like, how healthy guys were going to be, and who was going to be able to contribute at the highest level in the playoffs. But both teams have been able to find goals, and they're muckers. If you look, there's some dynamic, great plays, great finish by Fiala to knock that one out of the air and finish that one. Those are unbelievable plays in the pressure of the playoffs. But most of the time, there's some mucking, there's turnovers, there's quick chances, bodies in front, bouncing around. That's playoff hockey. And a lot of people consider the Oilers to be this super high elite offensive team. They can muck with the best of them. They don't mind getting dirty. With grizzled veterans like Corey Perry. Evander Kane scored a big goal right on the doorstep. It was reviewed. Obviously a failed challenge. That it's in the balance. But for me, the one thing that does stand out, just to follow up on that question, LA's been able to lull Edmonton a little bit. Right? They've been able, when they've had the lead, they've been able to kind of just play their game. And there's been stretches of like 13 minutes, I think, in game number 1 where they didn't have a shot on net. Something like that. Might even be more. Jack probably knows the
17,
number.
Yeah.
17. There you go. It was more.
Yeah.
But and we were kind of joking in the press box. We were like, rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. We're kind of like, they're just, this is perfect. We'll eat the clock off. But when Edmonton, the thing is, they kind of also almost like rope-a-dope. They play a little bit of possum. Because once they get down in a game, they mentally go, okay, we can't give up another one. We got to settle in here. We got to settle down and start playing defense, stop giving out number brushes. And then as their game starts to get a little more comfortable is when they start to take over. And it happened again in game number 4. There was a stretch there where LA was just holding on to the lead, and they were totally comfortable closing out the game that way and just playing defense, getting pucks in, making sure they're coming back, 5 across the line when McDavid's on the ice multiple times. All 5 guys were on the blue line or inside the zone when he came over that line with the puck. They were shutting it down. But it doesn't work against Edmonton when they ratchet it up. And they know this from experience. It doesn't work because they're too talented and they have too much desire. So for me, when they start to get in that lull situation, they need to do more. They need to go look for the next one. Yeah. That's just
Jack,
my opinion.
Jack, can I keep you for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
I know you got to prep for tonight's game, but we're making this as part of your prep, so you're doing good. Okay,
we're rehearsing.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like the pregame show. But anyway, I want to ask you about the coach's decisions here, guys. Yeah. When it came to the challenge in Game 3 for Coach Hiller, all right, is it 95% of that is the guy in the video who's looking at it saying, we need to challenge this? I mean, the head coach doesn't have a lot of time. He's got to make the final decision, but it's still whoever's looking at it originally. Now, your thoughts on that one?
Well, they had a lot of time. They had a lot of time because remember, they took a timeout.
Yes, they did.
They had, I think Louie, again, I don't know, everything seems longer in the thick of it, but I would suggest conservatively they had at least 3 minutes to bear down and look at that. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I don't know how, especially with a look at it 3 minutes, I don't think you can make that challenge. Louie and I both said almost in concert. I think if you listen to our telecast, we both said you can't challenge that. And we didn't mean it literally, but we meant you can't challenge this. There's not nearly enough there, and you're dealing with an Edmonton power play whose inevitability is that it's going to score. And certainly against LA in the last 4 years at nearly 45% now with 29 goals over the 22 games they've played. I just didn't think you could do it. Because look, worst case scenario, even if worst case scenario, it's 4-all, it's 6 minutes to go. You're on the road in Edmonton. You've got a shot here. I mean, big deal. It's 4-all. Yeah. I just thought that was a poorly conceived challenge, and it's funny. And I'll let Louie take over. Your next question probably had to do with the Game 4 non-challenge by Chris Nodblock that certainly Calvin Pickard wanted challenged. And Louie and I actually had a differing viewpoint, but Louie will tell you that call theoretically could have been challenged as well, and he feels like maybe a better than 50-50 chance it might have come off the board.
What do you think, Lou?
Yeah. No, I agree with Jack, and I think, just to back up his point and go along, the penalty kill at that point in time, had only given up 1 power play goal and 11 opportunities for Edmonton. So, Jim Hiller in the back of his mind is sitting here going, our penalty kill's been pretty darn good. They did get the 1, though, on the 1 chance they had in that game before that, and they went 2 for 2, ultimately scoring on the power play. But so that also was in his mind. But I also think what we've talked about before, seeing Edmonton starting to roll and starting to come back, starting to get their groove. And he's sitting there going, geez, we need to slow this down. So I think he's trying to protect his goaltender. I think there was some contact, but I think Kopitar was kind of pushing Kane into that mix, or at least didn't let him go anywhere. But I didn't see the interference on the play on the first 3-4 looks. At the end, I saw a little bit of contact with the right-legged Kane on the pad of Kemper inside the blue paint, actually right on the goal line. And it did shove it a bit. But again, he's kind of getting bulldozed a little bit by Kopitar. Yeah. He went for it. It backfired. He admitted it. It's done. It's part of the game. The non-challenge for me was a little more questionable for me. But I think because he did it so quickly, and Jack mentioned that, he just made the decision like that. It wasn't a big debate. It's not like you're humming and hawing over it and looking. He's like, hey, drop the puck, let's go. Everybody just kind of went, oh, we better get back to playing here. And it worked for him. It did. It worked for him. And you don't know how those are going to go. And quite frankly, being the analyst on those plays and trying to review breakdowns of what is a goal and what isn't a goal,
we don't know.
I'll tell you and you know what? And I don't care what the league thinks of this. It's really hard. It's hard because sometimes you just don't know which way they're going to go. And I think anybody would say the same thing if they're being honest. I don't want to say 50-50, but you never really know how they're going to perceive it. And sometimes what you think is a goal isn't a goal. And what you think is surely going to be called off, they counted a goal and you go, how is that possible? That's NHL hockey. Unfortunately, that's what it is. And I think Chris Knobloch didn't want to take that chance. He said, you know what? Let's just keep going.
And the karma worked for him. They drew a penalty, and Corey Perry knocked in a power play goal a minute later. So it really, I'm not sure it basically sawed the play. I mean, bottom line is that challenge in game 4 didn't matter. LA's got to close that game out. Quentin Byfield's got to make one more play. It's not just him, but the Kings, I know Jim Hiller got a little bit, testy when asked about it after the game, but I would, if I were looking at this series, I would look at 3 of the 4 third periods have kind of gotten away from LA, and the Kings have to be better in those moments to close out this series, because right now, as Louie astutely pointed out, that foundation is basically down to one block that's intact, which is the home ice record. If that goes tonight, it's going to be awfully hard for Los Angeles to get on the plane and mentally, as much as physically, believe it can go in there and win game 6 and bring the series back to Los Angeles for game 7. That's why tonight's game 5, and especially the start, for me, I think the start is more important for Edmonton, because the Oilers can flower that shaken belief a little bit if they start out the first period the way they close the game, because then you've got one team thinking, hey, we're getting better, we're passing this team if it's a race, and you've got the other team thinking backward and thinking we had our chances, and now it looks like it's slipping away for the 4th year in a row.
Right. But that third period, John, is going to be huge. If it's a close game, the Kings have to trust their guys and not get so thin where they can be worn down again. If that happens again, we'll never hear the end of this one.
Yeah. Just one thing, 19 of the 26 games this year, the team that has lost the previous game has scored first in the following game in the playoffs this year.
There you go. There's motivation there, right? It makes sense. I understand that. It's, because you're desperate. You're desperate. Right. Every game, and everyone says you can't carry momentum over, right, to the next game. I think there's some things you can carry over. You can carry over your feeling. You can carry over, that confidence with your lines and what you're doing. But it's a fresh start every game. Every single game, John, is a fresh start.
I would tell you this series hasn't followed any trend. I think this series, the other 7 can exist in their own parallel universe. This series, to me, I don't think you can look at anything relevant in another series and apply it to this one. I mean, Louie and I have been just fascinated. I would tell you this, and again, it's bias coming out because we're covering this series. To me, this series is its own entity, and the other 7, I'm sorry, they're going to have to line up and take a back seat. I don't know how I'd rank all 8 postseason series, but I'd tell you, for pure theater and entertainment, you're going to really have to spend a long time with me to try to convince me that anything's in the same stratosphere as this one.
Absolutely. Every face-off, John, is a new movie. Literally. It starts a new script.
Louie will tell you I'm an only child. I've never lost an argument in my life anyway.
No, but Vegas, Minnesota's been really good. The one thing I agree with the LA Edmonton series is that only one game has had more than one goal in the first period. It's been the second and third periods that have just gone crazy. So it's been.
And we haven't seen though too. We haven't seen in this series.
What's that?
We haven't seen a goaltender steal a game.
No. Kemper tried.
That's going to happen. He tried. He had his most valiant effort in game number 4.
The goaltenders in this series.
You got to think in 3.
Yeah.
The goaltenders. You got to feel someone's going to. One of the 2 goaltenders is going to steal a game.
The goaltenders in this series, to me, are basically like how Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. Yeah. It's basically staggering up at the count of 10, but basically falling into his manager's arms. So they've survived. They haven't necessarily won the game.
Yes, here's Darcy Kemper on the last goal in overtime from game 4. That's not the position you want to be in with the damn series on the line right there.
No. But it's indicative of, Louie talked about it. I mean, the one thing is once Edmonton gets in a certain mode, they do become a machine that's awfully tough to break down. And the overtime 5-on-5 was, sure, you could say they only had the one power play in overtime, but to me it seemed like those 18 minutes were mostly, it looked like an Edmonton power play, and Darcy Kemper was magnificent. And the other thing is, quite frankly, the Kings got some bounces in the first two games of the series. That's a bounce out to Draisaitl off a defender's stick. I think Edmonton, with the Fiala goal post at 3-2 and Draisaitl's game winner off a scrum in front. Again, you have to create that scrum, and Louis bang on again. Corey Perry, right center cast in creating chaos, but that's a bounce that goes to Leon Draisaitl. I've got news for you guys. He ain't missing from there.
Yeah, and Perry is pretty good for a guy that's collecting Social Security right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. That goal that he scored was, it's remarkable what he's been able to do. And I heard Kyle Bukauskas on the podcast today just saying how, Louis, maybe you guys may be able to know this far better than me, just that he was doing a lot more training during the season to keep his body in shape for this.
This guy, we watch him pretty closely all year long, and he understands that because of his age and because of how long he's been around the league and what the game has taken a toll on his body and what he has to endure, it's clean living. He has really buckled down this year just to make sure he gets his sleep on the plane. He's eating well. He's making sure that he's dialed in and recovering. And if you watch Chris Knoblauch, he will elevate and lower his minutes from time to time. But when Corey Perry's feeling it, he elevates the minutes up over 20 minutes in the game. So, and he was not that much in game number 3. He got sat on the bench and he didn't play as much. But if he's kind of rolling and he's feeling it, he's going to get him out there because he knows he can be that game breaker. He's going to create some madness around the net like he's done his entire career.
Yeah, he gets his juices flowing too against the Kings from his old Ducks days. I mean, he loves playing this team.
Yeah, they don't.
He
forget,
just loves playing this time of year. I mean,
That's
this
true.
is Corey Perry's time of year.
Exactly.
I think tonight he ties Mike Keane for 11th all time with 220 games played.
Wow. Okay.
And we, the one thing Louis and I think would concur about with respect to Corey Perry, and I think this is important when your team is so clearly driven by two superstars, is it's a pretty special situation when arguably the two best players in the game have the kind of reverence they have for Corey Perry the way they do.
Yes.
Corey Perry, it's hard to imagine McDavid and Draisaitl looking up to anyone.
Yeah.
But if you have that element on your team, you've got something. And I can tell you this, McDavid and Draisaitl respect Corey Perry as much as anyone they've ever played with or against.
Yeah,
Louis, they want what he's done once.
Yeah,
he won
exactly.
A Stanley Cup with the Anaheim Ducks. He's the only one on the team that's
exactly.
Won.
Now, Louis,
So
I mentioned during one of the interviews, I think it was with Coach Hiller after Game 2. Are you guys built for the playoffs? Because it's a whole different season, and Corey Perry is like the poster boy for that.
Yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah, you know what? Let me tell you, when he's that guy you want on your side where you're going down a dark alley and it goes south, you want Corey Perry on your side. Because let's face it, I mean, gamesmanship coming out. Him and Doughty have some wonderful conversations in between the benches when I'm there. I can listen to him. Doughty's one of the best chirpers in the game. They're cut from the same cloth, right? They're cut from the same cloth. Those guys, those are grizzled veteran guys that they're in the fabric of the game each and every night, one way or another. If it's not on the ice, it's off the ice, it's verbiage. They're going to find a way to be a part of the hockey game.
Yeah, it's the London Ontario connection. Those guys.
Yeah, there you go. Well, they're buddies too, right?
Yeah,
so I mean,
right.
it's amazing, but that just goes to show you the competitiveness of both of them. They don't care that they're friends. Yeah. On the ice, it's about winning. Simple as that.
Hey, Jack, I don't know about you, but I'm jealous of Louis' seat every night in these damn games.
Yeah. No, he does a great job. And the biggest thing I'm impressed with is he's still got enough agility because he hasn't taken one in the melon yet.
Oh, good. Yeah. Keep it that way.
Trying not to. Yeah. Calvin Pickard's usually the guy saving me down there.
Oh, beautiful.
Big Stuart Skinner's done it a few times too, but I'll be upstairs tonight in the press box with we're in the broadcast leveling upper concourse level at crypto.com. So it is a wonderful spot. It's the best seat in the house. I'll tell you what.
John and I are going to continue on with the show. I don't want to keep you longer than you need to be. Any last thoughts on the game tonight, guys?
Well, I mean, at this point, I don't have a conclusive idea of what's going to happen. I'm going to show up, and I'm probably going to see another classic. But no, I don't really have any expectations. Obviously, my inclination is that Edmonton has a monumental edge going into this game. But the Oilers, the one thing I think we should drill home in this, they've got to get off to a better start. In 3 of the 4 games, they have not been sharp at the outset. I think the Oilers need to capitalize on the general feeling of this series with a rock-solid first period tonight, because if they don't, then a lot of that mental stuff that I've talked about will dissipate quickly.
Yeah.
I agree. Can't let your guard down. You can't settle in and get relaxed and think, oh, we're back in the series if you're Edmonton. Because I think the Los Angeles Kings look at this and they look at it as an entirely different series. It's a 3-game series now, and they have home ice advantage. So reminds me a little bit of Groundhog Day. We're right back to where we started, guys. It's just a shorter series.
All right, guys. Hey, bring your harmonicas to the game.
There you go.
I blame Biz for that.
I got no comment.
Thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. It was a ton of fun. We'll see you tonight in the pregame meal, huh?
All right, sounds good.
See you guys.
All right, have fun tonight, boys. See you. John and I were going to stick around. These guys are gone. John, let's take a look at tonight's games here a little bit and your thoughts on the other matchups. Besides the fact we got to talk about Gabe Landeskog getting back on the score sheet, even though they're not necessarily wins right now for Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, so tonight you got 2 elimination games in Toronto and Carolina, and let's start in Toronto, where the Maple Leafs are trying to exercise the demons of what they're 1-11 in their last 12 closeout games. They lost Game 4 in Ottawa. We've had 3 consecutive overtime games. I mean, I think the series ends tonight in Toronto. I think it was all about just getting another home date for the Maple Leafs, but they're pretty much 1 goal better. I mean, I do think Toronto wins, but man, I'll give full marks to the Senators, who have made this a very competitive series. In Carolina, the Devils are just battered and bruised on the blue line, Ted. Here's the crazy stat in this series. These teams are even at 5-on-5. Each team has scored 6 goals, 5-on-5. That when I heard that number, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, Carolina's up 3-1.
Yep.
But they've scored 4 power play goals at the Hurricanes. They scored 1 shorty. The Devils are 0 for 12 on the penalty kill. I think this series is over tonight. And Carolina moves on. Vegas and Minnesota, I mean, what a job the Wild have done. It's been, one of the most entertaining series. We've had, I think it's, 27 goals in the 4 games in this series. Vegas, I think, breathed a sigh of relief, winning in overtime in game number 4, coming back. Philip Gustafson, the Minnesota goalie, has been better than Aiden Hill. No knock on Aiden Hill. It's just that Gustafson has done a phenomenal job. And so, I don't know. Like, for me, it's to pick a winner in this Vegas-Minnesota game. Can't do it. I just, Vegas odds-wise, I mean, they're over a 2-1 odds to win this game tonight. I think that's crazy. I think it's
wow.
They don't have any state tax in Vegas, but they sure do when it comes to betting on the Knights. I mean, there's a big tax here. From a betting standpoint, if you were to bet a team, I could only bet Minnesota. But by the same token, it's hard for me to go against the Golden Knights. And tonight in LA, I mean, look, I think that if Edmonton does score first tonight, I think it's really important for them to score first more than it is. It's more important
for the Kings to score first.
I think it's more important for the Kings to score first,
right?
Because they don't, you're going to continue to have that self-doubt.
Yeah.
So I think for them, that first goal is super important. Edmonton does it, then man, with the history, with how Game 4 ended, it's a really bad spot then for LA to have to come back.
Yeah.
Not saying that they can't. It's not like it's not like Patrick Roy's at the other end for Edmonton.
No.
But it's just don't allow the Oilers to jump.
They're playing with human stuff that exists. If you keep going back to the well, and eventually you're going to run out because you can't let these games get away like this, especially with their history, because it's that cloud hovering over everything.
I believe so. I mean, this is where I always Louis talked about it and talked about momentum. And I've said to you before in the show, it's not game to game, it's shift to shift. But in this situation, I think that this is where LA has to score first, and it's more important for them.
Yep. Talk about Gabe Landeskog and what he's done coming back. Here's a picture of him finally getting that first goal in 3 years. I mean, how great was that? I got a few of his emotions there after the goal. It's just incredible. And his family was there. I mean, this is like the ultimate story right now.
It sure is. And, and the fact that it was a goal from distance, Ted, that says a lot. I mean, that's big. I mean, look, they all count. They're all great. But it wasn't like Landeskog just, tipped a shot from in front of the net. That was a nice shot he made to score the goal. Yep. Phenomenal story. But here, the Dallas Stars are finding themselves up 3-2.
Yes, they are.
I think, I mentioned to you that, I was mentioning the stat about Carolina, the 6 even strength goals that they've scored. I think if I remember correctly, Dallas had only scored 5 goals in regulation going into that Game 4 on Monday night. They scored 6 in that game. You had, Wyatt Johnston scored 2 goals, his first 2 of the series. Mikko Rantanen scored a goal. I think Mason Marchment scored a goal. So, a lot of firsts for Dallas. Now the series shifts back to Colorado. Jake Ottinger's numbers, games 5 through 7, are better than they are games 1 through 4. His save percentage, I think, goes from below 900 to about 922 in the later stages of series. So Ottinger's been really good. I'm surprised that they've been able to do this without Miro Heiskanen. Full mark to Dallas for doing it. And Cale Makar's does not have a goal. He's a minus player in this series. That to me is one of the more concerning numbers for me.
Yeah. And Dallas, again, without Robertson, too. I mean, this is a team that's rallied around what they have. I love their coach all along anyway. But
we also lost 8 straight coming in. I mean, this is a team that, was god-awful coming into the playoffs.
Exactly.
Talk about flipping the switch.
Yeah, and everybody talks about, especially in hockey, how emotions are such a huge part of it. Look at this picture here. Okay, you got. I loved how the play-by-play guy said after this goal by Landeskog. He says, "We never see Nate McKinnon smile during a game.
Never."
And here he is. Look at him. That's why I brought this picture up. Yeah. And so you got all the emotions, everything in the world on the side of Colorado because of Gabe coming in, and it's meant almost nothing when it comes down to the bottom line.
Well, it meant something maybe in game number 4, but it didn't carry over to game number 5.
No, but it didn't mean anything in game 3. Right?
Oh, right. Didn't mean anything. Right.
That was his game. He came back, and they still lost.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm just saying, emotion. It's like home ice emotions. I still think momentum is the most overused word in all of sports, but whatever you want to call it, it's all great. But unless you go out there and actually make things happen and produce, it doesn't matter.
Well, what I will say, though, Ted, in fairness, in game 3, Gabe Landeskog played, he played 12 minutes and about 30 seconds. He was on the third line. He played 4, literally, I went and looked, he played 4 minutes each period.
Okay.
They eased him in game 3.
Of course.
Game 2, he gets elevated to the second line and the top power play unit. So, that was the big thing for Landeskog is that, how is he going to be able to respond from 1 to 2? How is he able to respond? Could he play, how is he going to respond from second game to third game?
Sure.
I mean, it's pretty impressive that a guy that hasn't played for 3 years makes his return in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he's been able to, not only keep up but to score a goal.
Right. But as we talked about before, he actually played a minute. They wouldn't be doing this if they didn't feel he was ready. I mean, you're not going to force him in there just because of the name on the back of his jersey.
Oh, of course not. But it's it's different playing an AHL game, regular season game, not even an NHL game, and then to play your first games coming back in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. A quick thought on the coaching change here in Pittsburgh as things have just gone south for the last few seasons and no playoffs, and you're going to lose your job eventually. It's 3 straight seasons.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the coaching change makes sense. It's not. This is not about Mike Sullivan. This is about I think an organizational flaw when you look at the roster. The fact that they didn't want to break up their. Toronto's got the core 4. They've got the core 3 in Pittsburgh with Crosby, Malkin, and Letang. They decided to keep them all together. It's an older team. They're trying. They were trying to get younger during the year. Mike Sullivan's not interested in a rebuild.
No.
So this is not because he's and he'll be scooped up. And my guess is that I think the Rangers would be the place that I think he was an assistant with the Rangers, if I remember correctly. And I think going there, I would be shocked if the Rangers don't throw out the wheelbarrow, and get on a plane and bring him in. It'll be a short flight. So, and then today, as we're here on the air, it's official in Vancouver that Rick Tocchet is out.
Okay. So now you've got, I think it's 8 openings in the league. This is turning into the NFL during the offseason. That's a lot of openings, which is a lot of opportunities for some guys. Of course, like for a guy like Sullivan, as you mentioned, he would narrow it down to just a couple of teams because he's not going
to Boston. I think
he wouldn't go to like a Chicago where you're starting with all these kids.
No, I mean, look, I've said it in multiple places. The most attractive head coaching job right now is here in Southern California with the Anaheim Ducks. By far, the most with that roster and where it's going. I mean, they're on the cusp of making the playoffs. They've got a good goalie in Lucas Dostal. They've got good, solid young D. They've got the youth up front. They've got all the pieces. So that to me is if I'm a coach, that's my number one choice. Joel Quenneville was linked to them. There were some reports about him over the weekend being, offered the job. It hasn't happened yet. I do, Tocchet. I always felt that if the Anaheim job became, or if Tocchet was let go, that Anaheim would be his first choice. May not be their first choice. I believe that's his first choice.
Any issues with the Quenneville being out of the game for a while and just coming back? He's doing his Gabe Landeskog behind the bench there.
No, I don't think so. I think that any team that's going to hire him is going to have to deal with the initial baggage. Just like Edmonton had to with Stan Bowman. But no, I don't. I don't think so. I think that you've got a guy who's probably super hungry to, just like a Landeskog who had to be super hungry to want to come back. I think Quenneville, itching to get behind an NHL bench again, and I don't think he got stupid over the last couple of years. So no, we'll see where it goes. But we know one place he's not going to go, and that's Chicago. I think look, you have to figure out, like, is Philadelphia, like, are they going to stick with Brad Shaw, not Terry Bradshaw, but Brad Shaw? We'll see. There, we said eight vacancies right now, and there's some good coaches that are out there. David Carl took himself out of the mix in Chicago.
Right. By the way, when you mentioned Brad Shaw, that brings back bad personal memories for me. Brad was with the Detroit Vipers of the IHL when he beat my Ice Dogs in the playoffs, in the finals. That was a killer, and he was one of their best players. That's a long time ago, but I go way back with Brad Shaw, not Terry Bradshaw. But anyway, okay, it's that time. Got to make some money, baby.
Oh God, the pressure's on me.
Yes, you're 100% on this show.
Yeah, what's my record? I don't even know. You say I'm 100%.
Yes. The pressure's
Okay,
killing me now.
Okay, so the first and foremost, best bet on the board. It's juicy at about minus 190. But Adrian Kempe to record at least 3 shots on goal tonight.
Oh wow, that sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, he's done that in 21 of the last 22 playoff games against the Edmonton Oilers. He's had at least 3 shots on goal. So
and what's the juice?
It's minus 190.
Okay.
So, some people will bet $1.90 to win $1. Some will just bet $1.90 to win, basically like 50 cents, just to keep it in its simplest terms. But I mean, that's my favorite play on the board tonight. Kempe over 2.5 shots on goal. If I could give out a second one tonight,
please.
Let me just quickly remind me. So we got Vegas and Minnesota, and we've got the New Jersey Carolina game.
Here we go. Here's the game.
So we're gonna go with Jacob Markstrom over 25.5 saves tonight. I think it's about minus 125.
Okay.
25.5. Hang on, let me just see if I can have the number handy here. I had it earlier. Got so many notes here, Ted. Yeah, Markstrom over 25.5 saves. The juice was minus 125. Okay. But I would expect, with how battered and bruised that the Devils' blue line is, missing some key components, and Carolina's propensity just to fire away at from anywhere. I like Markstrom over 25.5 saves. Okay,
so trying to stay at 100%, baby. That's pretty good stuff. Any last thoughts on the game tonight? Is there a carryover effect from the last 2 games? The way the Kings lost is more important to me than how Edmonton won. And maybe that means absolutely nothing to anybody else who's watching this show. But if there's no such thing as the word momentum, there is such thing as that's crap that's stuck in your head, and it's not going to go away until you get a W.
Well, just strictly from a Kings perspective, Ted, the way I look at it, I said after game 3 and heading into game 4 that the failed coaches challenge wasn't going to matter if they won game 4 or won the series. Like, people were going to forget, or if they won the series.
Yeah.
Then you see the collapse in game 4 combined with what happened in game 3. And I'm like, oh my God, like if they lose this series, what it's going to mean, you're definitely going to have shakeup here in Los Angeles for sure. And we may have shakeup anyways, but I just think that, for this group in Los Angeles that's been so focused on winning, getting themselves past the first round. I mean, Drew said at some point during the year, like, we want to win a round of playoffs this year. Winning this series now is taking on, I think, an even more significance for the Kings and their organization, who haven't won a playoff round since they won the Cup.
Yeah. But it is weird to think, though, that if they don't win this series, potentially what could happen. Now, I don't know, in the front office, it's all about, in every front office, it's about relationships and
the
giving.
GM doesn't have a contract beyond this year.
What's that?
The GM does not have a contract
right
beyond this year, as far as we know.
Right. But is it the GM's fault? I mean, we've been saying all along that he's actually done a phenomenal job the second half of the season and put together a team that, again, built for the playoffs.
Disagree now.
Okay. You didn't disagree at the beginning of the series because you agreed that they were. That's what you said.
Okay, I did. So I have the right, to change my mind.
No, absolutely.
Okay, and I'll tell you why they're not built for the playoffs.
Okay.
Because look at how this roster's been used in these last 2 games. If you're built for the playoffs, you're not going to 8 players, 8 forwards and 4D for the last 13 minutes of regulation to try to close out a game.
I get it.
So for me, they're not built for the playoffs.
But are they built for the playoffs? But the coach is not coaching them correctly in how he's using his guys. I mean, that's going to be the debatable thing, whatever happens in this series.
Well, right. Okay, sure. But I'm saying, whoever you want to blame, there is a lack of confidence in in a number, and look, at least 5 players that they feel can't play when we need them most. And that to me tells me you're not built for the playoffs.
Okay.
And one other thing, it's a very small thing and it had no effect on the outcome of game 4. But when we were talking about usage in overtime, Trevor Lewis got 1 shift in overtime. Why? He's not going to score. Like, Trevor, I just didn't understand it. Like, we're talking about everyone else who's not playing. Like, it just didn't make sense. It didn't have anything to do with the outcome. It's just more to me, Ted, about the usage of players. Like, do you really why would you put him out there in overtime? I don't get it.
Yeah. Of course, there's always stuff behind the scenes that we don't know about. Who knows if he said something between periods, something's going on. You never know, especially with an older player.
But that's why I just say that's why my feeling, I've changed my mind on this team being built for the playoffs because of the way they're using this roster.
I get it.
So that's my concern. I thought it was an interesting point just about, and I didn't notice this, and shame on me for not picking up on this, on Sammy Hellenius. Now,
what didn't you notice?
I didn't notice that he played 1:44 and had 4 hits.
Wow, that in game 4?
Yeah.
Wow. So what is he out there for if they're not going to use him?
Well, no, I'm saying why do you need? But after the first period he didn't play.
Well, was he hurt? I mean,
No,
maybe, who knows?
No.
Okay, so that's again a coach's decision,
right.
How you're using your players. If you don't trust your players at this stage, this is what happens. The cracks are going to fall here.
Right. Now, I don't remember if Turcotte hurt or they just scratched him.
I don't know.
Because, I just wonder if he's healthy, and I apologize for not knowing that. Right. But why not put him into the lineup tonight? If you're not going, I would rather, you've got more upside with Turcotte than you don't need Jeff Malott right now. This series is not one where the mitts, no one's dropping the mitts in game 5. Right. Really, whatever. I just don't. So I would rather have Turcotte. And if you're not going to play Trevor Lewis, to kill penalties, which I don't even think that would be a great idea because I don't think he's fast enough to be playing in this series. I just don't know. I don't know where the piece is for him. So
yeah, by the way, that might be a big factor why when they played him as much as they did, Trevor Lewis did not play him more because of, as the game goes on, that's maybe not the body you want out there.
Ted, he played 5 minutes and 19 seconds in game 4.
No, I know. Maybe they made a mistake. And I mean, because he won a cup 10 years ago, doesn't mean he should even be in the lineup in my mind.
Right. I just think that right now, I mean, if I'm LA, I would, if Turcotte is healthy,
okay,
I would find a way to get him in because at least he could provide you. If you're going to keep this 4th line to virtually no ice time, I'd rather have Trevor Lewis than Jeff Malott at this point.
Okay. Oh no, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You want experience.
I'm sorry, rather Alex Turcotte.
Yeah.
Than Jeff Malott.
No, either one because Malott is not for this situation.
Right.
Bottom line is you can't coach or play scared now. Either way. Yeah, I mean,
right.
you got to go all out, and what you got to go with it. You can't be afraid to play guys.
This is where you need your leadership group. And
yeah,
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure who that leadership group is. I know there are guys that all have letters. You've got the guys that have the letters in Kopitar and Doughty.
Well, I think Doughty's the guy.
Pardon?
I think Doughty is the guy that he basically has to almost do a private meeting right now with the coaching staff saying, hey, guys, you're going to do what you're going to do, but we need to make sure this is happening in crunch time. And we have every player available.
I'm talking about inside that room, Ted. I mean, let's remember, they've not won a playoff series with Doughty and Kopitar as the leaders. Everything, since
Justin
Richards and Stoll and Brown, they haven't won anything. So this is where you need someone to step up. Whether I don't know if that's Phil Deneau. I don't know who that guy is. And the other thing for me, Joel Edmondson, when he was brought in here, to have a physical presence. Now, I know he had 8 hits in game 4, but I want to see this guy knock someone down in front of the net, and just send a message. Like, I haven't seen that part of the game from LA, like, especially from a guy. I want to see guys, get nasty. And
but there's that fine line though, too, specifically against an Edmonton. You want to be nasty, but if you're being stupid and you end up putting yourself in the box for just to get a hit in, that ain't worth it. So
but I want to see the glove facial and something like that. That's what I'm talking about. I that's what I want to see from a guy like Edmondson, because he's got the playoff experience. I think he knows, how to toe the fine line. This is what, part of why he was here. But you can't, that guy, 36 minutes in game 4 is, I know it went to overtime. So that's, right. It's 36 minutes and, so we'll see.
Yeah. Bottom line is, I think this feels like a game 7 more than usual, because of the importance of the game. If the Kings lose, I don't know how they're going to win this.
Okay, but so if the Kings lose tonight, are we seeing a game 7?
No, I'm not one of these guys that, a fatal type guy. It's all over. Everything's over. No, but the bottom line is that how do they turn it around if they do lose tonight? How do they win in Edmonton in the next game and get all that, the normal, forget momentum, but just the confidence in the group that they're going to be doing what they need to do when it's like, oh no, we blew it again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I to your point, if LA wins tonight, I could see a game 7. LA loses tonight, I just think they're done.
And by the way, if the Kings win tonight, and depending how they win, but if they win convincingly, and they could have done that a few times already in this series, if they didn't let it get away.
Yeah.
I don't mean a blowout, but I just mean that they dominate territorially, and they like they have done. I mean, in this series, what you saw that lead stat. Did you see the stat there? How many minutes they've led in this series? Here it is. Look at this. This is a great stat in this series. Look at this. 174 minutes to 29.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now that doesn't tell you everything, but it says something about how this team.
But that makes sense. I mean, they have, outside of game 3 when Edmonton came out flying,
right,
2-0 lead. It's been, the Kings have dominated. There's no question. I mean,
right.
The first 2 periods have been all LA. And when you look, I was looking at the shot numbers in this series, and I know I wrote it down somewhere, but there's a big disparity come the third period, and overtime.
The shots from the last game were 33 to something.
18, I think 33 to 18.
Hold on, I got it written down here. It was. Let's see. It was from after the second period. The shots were, I've got it right here. Come on, baby. Where is this thing? 33-13, Edmonton.
33-13.
Shots on goal. Yep. After 2 periods.
I mean, and the shots, LA's being outshot now 51-37 in the third, 68 to 44, third period and overtime.
You got any prop plays on that at all? Third period shots?
No, but I would play I would play the second period over not 1.5, but 2.5 goals. Every second period in this series has had at least 3 goals.
Okay. But that stat we've been raving about for weeks and weeks and weeks. Here are the Kings. If they score 3, the game is over. You can go home. And the last 2 games, unbelievable how that has just totally collapsed.
And almost 3, Ted.
That's true. 3 times. That's true. So it's going to be fun tonight. Any way you look at it. You are coming tonight, right?
No, I'm not.
You're not coming tonight?
No, because the deal is that I do the post-game show for NHL Network Radio.
Right.
And our show, they've changed the format in that we go on the air at 10 p.m. Pacific regardless.
Oh.
So if this game goes to overtime, the full game gets broadcast on one of the sub channels on Sirius. So go check your local listings. But come 10 p.m., on channel 91, it will be it'll be the Ice Cap show, the post game show.
And you can't do the show from the arena though.
I can't, only because at 10 I can't go live with the show at 10. I would normally do it, like, there's no place for me to do it live when the game's going on.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm not very happy about that.
No, of all the games to miss, man, oh man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll see it for a game 7, right? Maybe.
Yeah, it just depends on
the time.
On the day. It just depends on the day. It's just because I trade off with another guy at the network. I'm doing. He covers the Maple Leafs for NHL.com. So if the Leafs are playing, he can't do the show. Leafs are playing tonight. Kings are, and so he can't do the show. So
a game 7, I think, would be Saturday. Here,
game 7, I'll be at game 7. Yeah, game 7. I would be at, because there won't be a show. We don't do shows on Saturday.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Shows Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Here's the schedule right here.
Yeah.
So game 7 be Saturday. Time doesn't matter because you don't have a show to do. So that's good.
Yeah. Interesting that so Darren Pang is here.
Okay.
So the TNT game. I wonder though if they're actually sending their broadcast, their play-by-play and color people here.
Oh, or if they're sitting doing it from their bathrooms again.
Right, because what TNT and ESPN have been doing for games is they will have someone ringside to create the persona that they're actually everyone's at the game. But they're it really,
the pandemic is over, people.
Yeah,
it's okay to travel them now.
It's
what the hell? It's so cheap, it's disgusting.
Yeah, save the money for the later rounds. Is what they're doing.
At the end of our yes, I'm just saying. Anyway, bottom line, who does Panger work with on the play-by-play? You know,
TNT. Oh, who's his partner? Oh, who's on the crew tonight? Oh, you know what? It may actually. I don't know who's doing. If it's Pang, it's probably
he normally does St. Louis, right? Okay.
Well, yeah, but he does TNT during the year, so it's he usually works with Brendan Burke. So it's quite possible that Brendan's here doing the game because it is in California. It's in the U.S., not Canada. So.
Yeah, the last game Darren was there, so I saw we said hi down in the room. So maybe he'll be back. Who knows? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it's quite right. It's possible. So
anyway, well, I'll say hi. I'll say hi to your empty seat tonight next to me up in the booth. So enjoy the game.
I wanted to come maybe for the first period or so, and it was just I've got to be able to watch all the games tonight. So
no, I get it.
It's too hard.
All right. So all the viewers, you know what kind of a tough job he's pulling a muscle right now, just thinking about what he has to do tonight.
Exactly.
All right, good show. Great to have Jack and Louie with us. A lot of insight there. I mean, talk about guys. That's almost like having your coaching staff with you.
It's great, and for people who don't know, I didn't want to bring this up during the show, but remember, Jack auditioned for the LA job.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, so when they were the year that when they knew that when Bob was retiring.
For Alex Faust, when Faust got it.
Alex got it, but they had brought in Jack Michaels, Ralph Strangis. But
I remember. I remember Ralph.
I remember the uproar when Jack was brought in to do a game and Kings fans were furious
because
he's an Oilers broadcaster. We don't want.
Of course.
We don't want this guy to be taking over the job.
That's too.
So funny. Jack was brought in.
I worked a few games with Jack at Sports USA on the radio as well during the playoffs. So he's a great guy and does a really nice job.
And American, he is one. Yeah. I think he's the only broadcaster working for a Canadian team that's American.
Well, it's perfect, just in case they become the 51st state.
Right. Yes.
Don't get me started.
I know, please. Yeah, we don't need to go there. I don't need to get started on it.
Yes. Did you vote yesterday?
I did not vote yesterday.
Okay.
I did not. No.
Okay. Well, we're not going to go there, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't vote. To be honest, I didn't know enough about either any of the candidates. I didn't know enough about them to vote.
But one thing's for sure, I think Canada is closer knit now than they have been, and they've always been anyway. But now it's a whole different ball game. Why they are closer knit, and it's a fascinating whole evolution there.
Well, it's twofold. One, it's because of, just what Donald Trump has done and his vitriol to Canada. But two, Justin Trudeau no longer being the prime minister, people really just wanted him out.
Right.
And so, it's, so.
Well, we'll see how the next few years bring.
Yes.
And the next few games. Good job, Johnny. We'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Hold the fort tonight.
Okay. Let's have some fun. Good night, everybody.